I hope that there is no adult in this space who underestimates the importance of gifts of time to our children. Even the seeming smallest moment, gift of time, can become a formative memory forever. Several summers in a row, I spent time living with my father's parents, Baba and Dido, I called them, since we are Ukrainian. And one lazy Saturday, I came into the kitchen where I found Baba playing a game of solitaire. 7 piles of cards laid out, stockpile in her hand, waste pile to the side. You know how this goes. Cards coming and going. I was mesmerized. She was probably in her early 60s at the time. I was maybe 10. Eventually, the solitaire game ended, and then she turned to me, and then she said, "Would you like me to show you something?" And she reached for my hand, and she placed it palm down on the kitchen table, and she put hers right beside mine, and there was my skin, clear. There was her skin, liver spots blooming on it. Then she lightly pinched a bit of my skin on the top of my hand, just like that. She made a tiny skin mountain. She held it and then let it go. And instantly the skin retracted and the top of my hand became perfectly flat again. And then she made a skin mountain on her hand. She let go, totally different story. The peak did not go away. It just stayed there. It was mountain, smaller mountain, and then almost with a exhausted sigh, it went back to normal. I looked at her suddenly, and she smiled and she said, "I am old." And I knew I was not old, but I was going to be old someday. My skin would become just like that. And then she got up from the table, made some instant coffee, asked me if I wanted to play some games, and of course I did. She was one of the rare adults in my life who ever actually played games with me, had time for that. Other adults always seemed too busy or too tired. But Baba made time for me. So we had epic games of Scrabble, epic games of Trouble, laughter, fun. I loved it. I'm thinking about Baba Makar this morning as we explore growing up, growing old, and growing true. 3 sub-themes of the larger theme of growth. First, there's growing up, which we heard a little about in the video from earlier. The adult interviewer asks, like a 5-year-old, "What age do you think you will move out of your parents' house?" And the 5-year-old replies, "I think I'll be 9. Interviewer: "So when you move out of your house at 9, how are you going to get anywhere?" Kid: "Maybe mom and dad will drive me." Interviewer asks another kid, different question. Interviewer: "Do you know how much a house costs?" Kid: "No." Interviewer: "Do you think it's like $20? Kid: "Higher." Interviewer: $50? Kid: "Higher." Interviewer: $1 million? Kid: "Higher." Interviewer: "Higher? 5 million?" Kid goes, "Maybe." And so on. What does it mean to grow up? It means crossing a line and you can never go back. You cross a line and you can never go back to that place where independence from parents is unimaginable. You cross a line, and you can never go back to that place where obliviousness about money is perfectly safe. By the time Baba showed me the skin mountain game, she had blown past all sorts of these lines. Both her parents had died by that time. She'd been married for decades by then. She had 3 kids and many more grandkids. I was one. Establishing one's independency, however that looks, that is the classic marker of growing up. But the only thing I'd add here is that it's a primarily external marker, and a person can have this and still seem not to be very grown up. You know any of those people? What's missing is maturity of character, as in taking time seriously, confronting responsibilities head on, taking care of your health, investing in true friends, focusing on self-improvement, and being generous and giving back. Baba had all of these things too. She was grown up externally and internally. And she was also growing old. That's what growth involves for everybody. Time's relentless arrow, moving bodies from infancy and childhood and youth to young adulthood, middle age, old age, death. The elastic skin of a child's hand versus the not so elastic skin of my Baba's hand. This is the part of aging that can seem so frightening. You lose a control over your body that you really didn't know you had until things start changing. At 46, my eyes could focus on print material just fine. And then I woke up one morning when I was 47 and I became a huge investor in the reading glass industry. Readers in about 6 locations in my home, readers in my car, readers in my backpack, readers here at work. Aging changes our eyes. It changes our faces. We experience entropy in our arms and our legs. Slow, gradual decline into disorder. Then comes the creaking days, says Ecclesiastes chapter 12 in the Hebrew Bible. Years creep up in which one feels like saying, I have no taste for them, for the sunlight darkens in my eyes. Dimmed is the light of the moon and the stars, and the vision is patchy, like a cloudy sky after the rain. The hands and the arms, the guards of the house, they begin to tremble. And the legs, like battle-tired soldiers, are unsure in their step. The grinding mills, the teeth, they are fewer. And the windows of the mind, they fog up. Oh, thank you, Bible. Thank you, Bible, for that. I listen to that, and what I really need to hear to lighten things up somewhat is a counter story like this one, which is told by Virginia Ramig. It's a friend of hers, told her about an aunt of hers who had loved to paint ever since she was a child. Some of her happiest hours were those that she spent creating colorful images on canvas. As she aged, though, she developed macular degeneration, leaving her only with peripheral vision. But she was not deterred. She kept on painting, and then she had a stroke, which kept her from using her right hand. And as soon as she was up and able to walk around, she began painting again, now using her left hand. And this is what she said. She said, "This will be my abstract period." The message here is telegraphed very well by French writer Jules Renard. It is not how old you are, but how you are old. It is not how old you are, but how you are old. I want to be like that aunt who painted. I just want to be like my Baba. I just want to be like my Baba, who was growing old, and yet her spirit was one of the youngest I ever knew, probably younger than my spirit back then. Growing old never has to mean your soul dies. Creakiness of body never has to mean creakiness of mind or spirit. But there's a third and last thing I want to say about growing, that it is an orderly process. It's not chaotic. Just as the coffee bean reveals its taste when boiled, so the human spirit reveals one layer in the course of living and then another and still yet another. I'm just going to stretch this coffee bean analogy to the breaking point, and here it is. That the coffee bean, that is the human spirit, is so rich with untapped potential that no amount of boiling water will drain it. If I could invent a coffee bean like that, I would be a billionaire. But I am saying the human spirit is like that. A coffee bean that never loses its capacity to flavor. Always more flavor there to come out. Psychologist Erik Erikson said that there are at least 8 layers of flavor, in fact. And he expresses them in terms of pairs of opposites. First is trust versus mistrust. That is the layer that comes to the fore at infancy. And then at toddlerhood, it is autonomy versus shame and doubt. During preschool years, it is initiative versus guilt. During adolescence, it is identity versus role confusion. In young adulthood, it is intimacy versus isolation. In middle adulthood, it is generativity versus stagnation. In late adulthood, it is fulfillment versus despair. You might not be familiar with Erickson's theory, but I only ask that you have allowed those words describing each of those stages to wash over you. They are all important words, would you agree? They are all important words. One momentous stage unfolds and leads to a different stage, and on and on. Growing true is not random, but a constant process of being opened up to more and more of what you are. There is no end to growing true. All those years ago, sitting at the kitchen table with Baba, and she is showing me her Skin Mountain game, and then we play Scrabble and Trouble together. This was happening when she was in the growth stage. When she was in the growth stage that Erickson calls generativity versus stagnation. It happens in middle adulthood when people can feel powerfully called to provide guidance or a legacy to the next generation. And if they do not heed that call, if they distract themselves with false priorities, they end up feeling stuck. A feeling of stagnation drags them down. They might have checked off all the boxes of what it means to be grown up, at least in the external sense, but things are starting to feel shallow. They are feeling hollow. That is where Baba was in her growing true process. She heeded the call of her life. She was generous with me, and she, as you can tell, left a real legacy. And I really hope others can say that about me, and I hope they will be able to say that about you as well. Amen.